going live on IG also. So, yeah, so we're here for Strategy Sunday. We got a great episode tonight. We're going to talk about XRP. We're going to talk about Microsoft. We're going to talk about AMD and ROKu, and then we're going to talk about 401ks. I've been getting a lot of questions about 401ks over the last few weeks. Then we're going to talk about one stock that I think still has a lot of potential to do well. Now, last week, we talked about ROKu. ROKu went up 40% this week, right? If you were joining Strategy Sunday last week, we talked about how ROKu had a high potential to go, to move up a lot over the next few weeks. And actually it happened a lot earlier than I thought. Went up 30% in one day and went up a little bit, throughout the week, right? So we had a lot of great wins this week. So for those if you're on the YouTube right now, I need you guys to like the content. Also need you to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Also, if you're on Instagram, I need you guys to share live with 10 of your friends. Put the word shared in the comments. So I know a lot of you guys made a lot of money on ROKu, especially with the option play, especially in the CNC, which is our trading group. It's a 5-star community where we provide instruction, accountability, we try signals, and we also provide free classes and also free events for people when we have an event in your town. So I encourage you to join the CNC. You can text the word CNC to 89603, or you can DM me the word CNC during or after this live, and I'll respond with the link. So let's jump into it. We're a little late tonight. I apologize about that, but let's go ahead and jump right into this content. So the first thing we want to talk about is XRP. It's down a little bit. It took a little dip because of interest rates and a lot of other factors. The biggest factor right now that's hanging over XRP is the possibility of the SEC doing an appeal. Now, I believe, and I'm no legal expert, but I believe they have 10 more days to do an appeal and they lose their opportunity. Now, I'm not a legal expert. This is what I've heard. I'm just speculating here. I'm just going to say that right now. I could be wrong, but people have told me that they have about 10 days and they can no longer appeal. So until this is happening, we're going to be in a holding position because a lot of people don't really know what's going to happen. And whenever there's uncertainty into the market, in any market really, it's always going to cause a sell pressure on any asset. It could be stocks, real estate, regardless. People are more likely to get scared than they are to get hyped or excited. So what they'll do is they just start selling to ease that fear. So it always causes markets to go down whenever there's uncertainty or in a market. So that's what we're waiting for right now. I still believe that XRP has a lot of potential to go to $2 before the next halving. Now, for those of you who are new to this channel, one of our biggest plays that we're focusing on over the next 2 years, and I did a halving report, and I'm not offering it for free anymore, but I gave it for free to anybody who wanted it over the last 2 weeks. Now, if you got that halving report, I want you to drop some money bags in the chat. If you like the halving report, like 4,000 people downloaded that report. That report laid out what we're looking forward to over the next 2 years when it comes to crypto. Now, if you've been following me for 4 years, since before the pandemic, you know that I laid out a plan in the halving of 2020. We made a ridiculous amount of money on 2 different stocks, and we made a lot of money on crypto that year. We made, I think, 26 millionaires in 2 years, and we also made a lot of people a lot of money. People were able to buy houses. People were able to put their kids through college. People were able to pay off bills, and we did a lot of great stuff during those 2 years because we were able to anticipate the Bitcoin halving and make plays based on that, on the overall pick and shuffle strategy. Now, that's what we're going to try to do over the next 2 years, right? Is that we know that the halving is coming up. We know by the block time it's going to happen sometime March or April of next year. So we know that we have an opportunity to make similar plays. Now, I don't believe it's going to be as extreme as it was before because of a thing called the law of diminishing returns. That means every time you do an action, the returns are less. There's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly competition and people being aware and the market inefficiency closing. But we still got a good opportunity here. Like I said, I think this is the last one. I think this is the last big opportunity to obviously play the Bitcoin halving. Now it's going to be, another chance to make money in crypto. but it's not going to be as obvious as it is right now. So like I said, I think XRP sometime around March or April of next year is going to be around $2-3 a token. And I believe that once the Bitcoin halving sets in, remember that's about 6 months after March, it puts us at the end of the summer in 2024. That's when we're going to see the full effect of the halving start taking place. And we're going to see Bitcoin, we'll see Ethereum, we're going to see XRP skyrocket over the next 18 months. And that's when we're going to see XRP go from $2-3 range to, $30, $20, $30, $40. So it's not going to happen for a while. Even if we're lucky and XRP does what we think it's going to do, we'll probably see a $2-3 range, what is it, 70 cents? So that's like a 400% return over the next like 8-9 months. But the real gains are going to happen sometime in the middle of the next year, maybe early 2025. So that's really what I think is going to happen with XRP. I think that, like I said, I believe that it's going to reach the next bull run. We're going to have between a $20 and $40 price range. I think that even if you look at the historical chart analysis, we're looking at a $26, a $26 XRP. If you look at the way XRP moved in 2017, 18, in relation to Bitcoin and where we think Bitcoin's going in 2024, 25, even if you do technical analysis, look at the charts, we're looking at $26. But I think it's going to get a little bit higher than that because of, I think hype's going to be a lot more intense. And I think XRP is starting from a lower position than it was back in 2024. So right now, like I said, it's trading around 70 cents. It's down a little bit since the government announced they were going to raise rates again. So I think that we are in a good position with XRP. So I'm going to talk a little bit about ROKu. Somebody asked me, do you think we should still buy ROKu? I still think it's a good chance. Like I said, I can't tell you what to buy and sell, but I think that there's still a great chance to buy. We got 1,400 people. We got 1,400 people on the live tonight on YouTube. I need you guys to like the content, and I need you guys to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. YouTube is growing a lot, man. We're going to be at 100,000 probably by the end of the year. But if you're on Instagram, I need you guys to, if you're in the CNC, both Instagram and YouTube, you've been making money last week, you've been making money the previous week. I need you guys to drop those money bags in the chats so we can make everybody aware of what's happening in the CNC, and hopefully they'll opt to join. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Microsoft and artificial intelligence, right? So before we continue, I just want to talk, we want to talk about a couple of AI stocks really, but I really want to stop and talk about Microsoft because this AI movement's not over. So I believe with AMD and NVIDIA, AMD is not so much, but NVIDIA, most of the big run up is over. Right, because most people missed it, right? That was the 400% run up from 130, 140. We're at about, where's NVIDIA at? Let me see. We're at 467. So that's roughly about 350% from when we started. So a lot of people that picked up that play in January, when we were talking about NVIDIA, we were talking about the AI play, the AI trend that was forming. Some people were up 300-400% on that play with the options. Some people were up 20, 30 times their money, right? But I think that the NVIDIA play is mostly over. But AMD, I think, still has a little bit of momentum. And AMD has earnings this week. And I really believe that I'm not saying, remember when I called out back in February, I said that Tesla would blow out earnings, even though no major analyst on the planet said it but me. And I was right again. Now, I think that AMD is going to surprise the analyst again. Now, it's not going to be as big as it was with Tesla, like they blew out earnings. But I think that the analysts are miscalculating or misjudging the impact of artificial intelligence on these semiconductor stocks. And it's happened several times over the last few months. Now, because the analysts haven't put in or analyzed the AI trend and how powerful it's been in society-wise. So they're still looking at historical information, looking at things from the past. They're trying to compare it with stuff that they're not truly able to understand yet. So I think that they're misanalyzing AMD. I think AMD will still beat the earnings this week. I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not sure. But I think AMD is still a good play. But I think a lot of the run up on AMD and a lot of the semiconductor stocks are basically over, really, to be honest. So we got to start looking ahead, right? So two more stocks that I think are good AI plays. And we've been talking about these two stocks. It's nothing new. Microsoft is one. And the other one, so like I said, Microsoft right now is at, let me see where it's at. Microsoft stock right now. Remember last week I told you I think it could get to 450. It's at 338 right now. I still will stand on before the end of this year. I think that Microsoft will be past 400. And I think we got a good solid chance of it being the 450. Now there's a bunch of reasons for that, right? It's because of one thing, cloud computing. Microsoft was a software company, but they're moving into more of a services company. And remember, Azure is a cloud, like Amazon also has AWS, which is their cloud solutions they offer to companies. So Microsoft also has a solution called Azure, and I've used it before in the past. It's expensive though, but even when I worked at AAA, I was the technical lead for the travel team in AAA. And when I left AAA, we were moving over to Azure. Now, Azure is a hosted cloud service, right? That means you can store your database, you can store your software, you can even store bits of your code there, right? To take some of the pressure off of your internal infrastructure. So Microsoft is rapidly and aggressively growing this business, right? And a lot of companies, you have to remember, there's two companies that most old companies, a lot of the older companies use. That's IBM and Microsoft, because a lot of their products are already heavily integrated with those two companies. So a lot of times what a company will do is they don't like to go away from their vendors that they already use. Even though that vendor may be more expensive, the person that's making the decision, it ain't their money anyway. You see what I'm saying? So if I'm making decisions for a company and I'm like, well, this one's going to be a little cheaper, but I got to do a lot more work for this one. So I'm going to go with who I know, right? Because there's even a saying in tech. There's a saying in tech. And you know what the saying is? Nobody ever gets fired for going with IBM. That's because you can't, how are they going to judge? You go with the best company out there, even though it costs more. You're not going to lose your job. Now, if you pick some crazy company out there, yeah, you may lose your job over that one. But nobody loses their job from choosing IBM. Nobody, right? So companies or decision makers are way more likely to go with who they already know. So I think Microsoft can take advantage of that over the years, especially for the rest of this year. Offer their Azure services, which includes AI services. Remember what I told you what the next wave of AI was? It was infrastructure was first. That was AMD semiconductors and other processor companies. The second thing is they need to do work on the software side. Now that's where Azure comes in. That's where Twilio comes in. That's where these CrowdStrike, which we're going to talk about later. That's where these companies come in and fill that need for companies who are ready to move on to the second phase of this AI build out, right? So I think Microsoft is in an extremely and uniquely good position to take advantage of this over the next few years. That's why I have that price target of 400 to 450 by the end of this year. And it's all because of those two things, really. Microsoft has a huge investment in AI. They put $13 billion into OpenAI, which created ChatGPT. They got in 2024, they made $110 billion on cloud revenue, right? Azure was the main driver of that. Like I said, I think Azure, AWS, I think those are going to be the future when we talk about technologies. These cloud-based services of these two companies, first Amazon and secondly of Microsoft. Right? Twilio is also coming back, Mexican. So let's talk a little bit about ROKu. Then we're going to talk about our 401ks worth it. And we're going to talk about one stock that could possibly explode. Now, I need you guys to do something for me. If you're on YouTube, I need you guys to like the content. We got 350 likes, but we got 920 people in here. Now, we should have at least one like for every single person that's in this chat. If you're on Instagram and you're in the CNC, I need you to drop those money bags if you've been making money in the CNC. If you want to join the CNC, DM me the word CNC, or you can go to jointhecnc.com, or you can text the word CNC to 89603. and we'll get that link to you. So the last thing, a couple of things I want to talk about before we go is ROKu, right? Like we said, we called out ROKu. Before we go to ROKu, I want to talk, let me see. My notes are off here. These are it. Okay, so here we go. So I want to talk about a couple of things before we move on, right? Is another stock that I think, I've been saying this for months, right? Is that if you've been watching me for a while, you know I never really liked Mark Zuckerberg. Now, but people always say, man, who am I to not like Mark Zuckerberg? I can not like whoever I want, right? I know he's a billionaire. I know he's one of the richest people on the planet, but I can still not like him. I've been in technology since I can remember, and I really admired Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Now, whatever Bill Gates is doing now, I don't know. Because a lot of people say he's into crazy stuff. I don't know because I really ain't been following that part. But I'm talking about the way he built the business, the way he created software as a license instead of being a product that you sell one time. The way that he developed and innovated. Now, I know he bought DOS from somebody else, but it still takes a lot of effort, a lot of insight, a lot of foresight to be able to take a product and build it up to what he did and be able to take 90% of computers at one point had Microsoft on the computer. Now that's a lot of intelligence to do that. Steve Jobs is another guy that I really admired a lot. Now Mark Zuckerberg, not so much because I didn't feel like he innovated much. He stole a lot. And I think he got lucky with Facebook, right? I know, and I'm not saying he's not incredibly intelligent, but incredibly intelligent people sometimes win the lottery. So I think that's what happened, right? But then I really started admiring him when I started realizing maybe he came of age, maybe he became more mature, but he's starting to innovate now. He's one of the four. He changed the entire company to Meta. Now everybody thinks he's crazy for that, but he has a long-term vision that I think is going to set him apart and put him in that same group as Steve Jobs and Bill Gates because he is one of the forefronts. He's one of the forefathers of this metaverse concept. Now, I know y'all think the metaverse is over, but I promise you it's not. I promise you it's not. Technology in the past, if you look at historically, you'll realize that and actually I talk about it in my book. So get the book. It's on Amazon. The Strategic Millionaire. And we talk about how technology forms trend. There's a hype cycle, which everybody gets all excited about it. Then the technology disappears. But that's when the real money is made, when everybody stops talking about it. So that's what's happening with the metaverse right now. It's in that second phase, which seems like it's disappearing. But that's when the companies, the innovators, the developers are putting work into this technology. So the next hype cycle is going to be completely different than what we know. Now, a lot of y'all think this is the first AI cycle. This is not the first cycle. This is like the third one I've been through in my life. Now, a lot of people ain't been paying attention to the stock market. You ain't been paying attention to companies. But this is the third AI hype cycle I've been through in my life. One was 10 years ago and one was in the early 2000s or mid 2000s. Now, y'all don't know that, but this is the third one I've been through in my life. Now, this is the biggest. This has affected more people. This has brought in a lot more new people, and it's changed a lot of society that it didn't before, but this is the third AI hype cycle I've been through. This is not new. These are cycles that we can almost predict down to the year based on certain underlying trends that happen in society and in life and also in charts. And my book talks about that. But I think Meta could eventually end up as a $1 trillion valuation. I think that it's definitely a good company to add in somebody's portfolio. Now, I'm not telling you what to buy and sell, but if I were somebody out there, that's what I would do, right? Now, I still think it has a good potential to go up 30, 40% over the next year. So I want to talk a little bit about ROKu, right? Is that we talked about it last week, but a lot of people, of course, didn't pay attention. And, it went up 30%. Now, I still think ROKu has a lot of potential. I'm going to tell you why. Let's look at the stock price. I haven't looked at it. ROKu stock is $89. It went up 31% on Friday for the week. It was up roughly about 40% since last Strategy Sunday when we called it out. 30% last Strategy Sunday when we called it out. Now, why would ROKu continue to go up? Now, most people know ROKu as just a TV company. You know, that's smart TV. You know, we watch shows streaming. It's just like almost like a mid layer or like a proxy in which we watch our favorite shows. We open up ROKu, we open up Netflix, and that's the only way we know ROKu. Maybe the remote says ROKu. People don't know that. But ROKu is actually pulling a very smart move. What they're doing is that they're starting to change their software into being more of an operating system. Now, remember when we talked about earlier how Bill Gates was so intelligent, so innovative that he was able to put Microsoft on 90% of computers? That's what ROKu is doing right now. Right? Bill Gates' biggest innovation was his licensing of Windows software. Now, it wasn't really the software. He went to IBM, and IBM said, we want to buy your operating system, right? And at that time, nobody had ever thought of licensing the software, which allows the owner to give it to whoever they want, and it would require you to pay yearly or subscription, or you'd only have it for a certain amount of time within a limited, use case, right? Nobody ever did that before. They just sold you the software like they would sell you the computer. So it's just two products you got. Bill Gates was smart enough to license, so that allowed him to put it on your computer, anybody else's computer. So at that time, IBM was the biggest computer company on earth because they built their own software. So if you remember IBM compatible, if you're old enough, you remember that kind of terminology. Is this IBM compatible? Is that IBM compatible? Because that's how it was back then. But what Microsoft did is it changed the entire game. So instead of just putting their software on IBM computers and people would be required to buy IBM, they reserve the right to put it on any computer they want. So by doing that, in effect, they made every single computer the same, regardless of the manufacturer. There was a power play to remove power from the manufacturers to who? To Microsoft, the software creators. And this is exactly what ROKu's doing now. Is that unless you get a Samsung, regardless of what cheap TV you get, it's ROKu on there now. Because ROKu is employing the same strategy. Is they're taking power away from the manufacturers. So let the manufacturers make cheap TVs. It don't matter what the manufacturers, because from the consumer standpoint, they know how to use it. They know how it works. They know they're going to get the same product because we control the software. So they're becoming actually more powerful than the manufacturers themselves. When you do a strategy like this, what you do is you reduce the manufacturer side to commodities. A commodity is the same no matter what. If you buy a truckload of gravel, you don't care where you get it from. That's a commodity. From the dude up the street down there, you're going to pay the same price. Ain't no difference in the gravel. That's what a commodity is. Products that have no difference. Branding or whatever, it's the same product regardless. So they've reduced the hardware. They haven't done it yet. They will reduce the hardware to a commodity, which gives them all the power. So over the next 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years, maybe even the short term, ROKu is going to go up. The price of ROKu and the value of the company will explode exponentially if they're able to pull this off, putting themselves on the side of the power side of that play, letting the manufacturers spit out cheap TVs. And no matter what you get, the brand of ROKu is in your mind, not the TLC or whatever that brand is, TCL or whatever you get. The brand of ROKu will be in your head, right? What does the remote say? ROKu. So ROKu is actually creating a market where they have no risk because they're not creating the hardware. It's a brilliant move. They're going to become an operating system company. They're going to get rid of all those sticks and stuff like that. And they're just going to become the software that goes in there, which reduce their cost bases ridiculously while allowing them to expand exponentially. And this is why I still think that ROKu has a lot of room to grow. And it's a lot of money still to be made in that particular company. So let's move on. Last 2 things, we're going to talk about our 401ks worth it. And we're going to talk about one stock that I think can still have a lot of potential to blow up. Now, if you're on YouTube, you haven't liked the content, I need you to like it. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. If you're on Instagram, I need you guys to like the video and also share it live with 10 of your friends. Put the word share in the comments. Also, if you haven't joined the CNC, DM me the word CNC. I'll send you the link. Appreciate you, Cooksey. Also, if you guys own it, you can buy a few badges on Instagram. I think you can buy some badges on or something. You could buy those top chat things on YouTube. So I want to talk about two more things, right? Because I put up a video earlier this week. And I'm not against 401ks, you know. People think I am, but I'm not. Because the thing about life is that many things are not black and white. And most people want it to be black and white because it's easier to make a decision on something if it's a 0 or 1, black or white. They want something that's an obvious difference so they can make decisions. But the sad part about life is that most things aren't black and white. Most things are gray, shades of gray. So that's how 401ks are. It's a shade of gray. There is no, I can't tell you it's wrong. I can't tell you it's right. It depends. You should probably match. Now let's go back. So I'm going to talk about 401ks from a high level, and then we're going to talk about go down to a low level. There's nothing wrong with 401ks, but on the other hand, the 401k is not for your benefit. It's for the bank's benefit. Think about this. Now, one thing that I learned in life is that whenever somebody tries to convince you of something, you always think, what do they gain out of this? And if you can figure out what they gain and it's acceptable to you, a lot of times deals can be made and agreements can be, you can come to agreements a lot easier. If you have to figure out what the other person wants, put yourself in their shoes and say, why are they trying to convince me of this? You know, narcissists can't do that. They can't put themselves in somebody else's shoes. A smart, intelligent person can. They put themselves in somebody else's shoes and say, what does this person want? And then figure out what they want. Then they can make that agreement work. Now, think about this. Why does the banks come to your job every single year and try to convince you to put more money in your 401k? Somebody answer that for me. Why would the banks have an interest in how much you save for retirement? They do it every year, open enrollment. The banks come chase whoever, and they try to convince you. They show these charts. If you're 20, you put your money in. This is where you'll be. You need $7,800 for retirement. You need to put more money. What do the banks get out of you putting your money in your 401k? Think about that. The banks, on average, will make $160,000 per person per 401k over your lifetime. And people say, how are they doing it? I don't know. It's through fees. There's two ways that they'll charge you fees through your 401k. One is directly. So you'll see it at the bottom of your statement, 1%. The other way, which is the most common way, is through the mutual funds or the index funds that you buy or the funds that you buy in general. You get these funds like Vanguard 200 or whatever, and you get these funds, the fees come out of the back end of that. So you may put $1,000 into this fund, it goes up 20%. But your return is only 18% because that 2% was taken off to the fund managers and the banks that own those funds. That's the way that they get you. It's two ways, directly or they get it through the funds. That's the reason why they want you to put more and more money in, right? Which is nothing wrong because sometimes you can have a mutual beneficial relationship. You make money, I make money, we're okay. But a 401k is not 100% in your benefit. It's a good backup plan. You should match the amount, but the only thing I say is you should not use it as your only safeguard and retirement plan. I've talked to people before and say, man, do you invest? They say, yeah, I got a 401k. That's not investing. That's a safety net, right? That's all it is. And I've maxed out, when I sold my company, I worked for AAA for another year. I actually maxed out my 401k that year because I didn't really need the money I was working for. So I did do that. But But I know what that money's not, I'm not going to touch that money times 65 if I make it that far. That's a safety net. That's not my be all, my everything. That's my only investment I have. If that fails, I'm done. It's a safety net. That's it. A small safety net that you use in the future. Now, you build real wealth through real estate, stocks and bonds, even cryptocurrency now, and others in business building. That's where the real wealth comes from. 401k is the safety net that underlies all of that. So that's my thoughts on 401k. 401k used as a down payment for a property. That's a smart way to use a 401k. Take loans out against it, because it's another smart way. Because when you take a loan against your 401k, you pay yourself back the interest, that's a smart thing to do. But it's a tool to be used for a lot of things: loans, tax, to get out of tax, short-term taxes, to build wealth. Sometimes it's easier just if it's taken out from you, you don't see it. But the only way I'm against 401ks, I want you aware of why the banks want you to do it. And two, to be able to use them, not for a be-all, end-all retirement plan or your lucky pot of gold at the end. You use it for what, for different strategies, but not that strategy. So let's move on. So before we start, I need you guys to like this content on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribe to the channel. On Instagram, and if you making money in the CNC, I need you guys to drop those money bags. Also in the, you can do it in what you call it. Yeah, it'd be kind of stupid not to get the free match in 401k. Anything past that, it's up to you. I appreciate you, Cree. 401ks aren't guaranteed. And secondly, you got to remember the bank's making they make as much money as you make in your 401k, the banks make that much too. That's what I'm saying. They take $160,000 per person per 401k over your lifetime. That's a ridiculous amount of money. That's why they're so adamant on getting you in these 401ks. Always, whenever somebody tries to convince you of something, you always say, what's in it for them? You know how a lot of people get in scams? And it's a big scam that's happening, a real estate scam that's happening all over Instagram. I'm not going to say no names, but you'd ask the dude, what's your why? And you know what they respond with? I'm just trying to help the community. Anybody that says that 9 times out of 10, they're going to rip you off. If it's some kind of investment involved. Now, if they just want you to come work at the soup kitchen or something, that's different. But somebody say, man, I need you to invest $100,000 because, I'm just trying to help the community. No, they're not trying to help the community. They're trying to steal your money. But always try to figure out what somebody's why is. Whenever you're in some kind of negotiation, and that why is almost, when it comes to money, 99% of the time it's not for philanthropic reasons. It's for money-making reasons. If they tell you anything other, it's because they're trying to mislead you so that they can make even more money. But when anybody says, hey, man, we're just trying to help the community, man. We're just trying to do this because, we want to see people in the houses. No, that's not it. They're stealing your money. That's what it's for. They're going to steal your money, guaranteed. That's what it's for. Nobody wants to help the community. Very few people want to help the community in that way. You want to help the community, go down and build some Habitat for Humanity houses. You don't take investor money. That's not helping the community. So let's move on. Last thing I want to talk about is one stock that I think is going to do well. I've talked about this stock before. Somebody said, I appreciate Armando, great advice. Yeah, I always try to figure out somebody's why. That's why I became so good at negotiations, because it took me a while to figure this out. Is that most people, I'll give you a good example. When you sell a car, right, and somebody comes over to buy that car, somebody will tell you, I want to buy your car, but I only got 5,000. Like, I hate that. Like, I only brought 5,000 with me. I don't care what you bought. The car is 7,000. You see, because they're not thinking about what your why is. Now, if somebody has a why, like, why are they selling this car? They just got to get rid of it. And then you say, well, I'm going to pick the car up today. Get it out of your driveway. Here's the money. Now you You just triggered their why. So they're going to act on that. But if you just think about yourself, it's very hard to make deals and negotiations. You got to put yourself in that person's shoes and try to figure out what do they want. And then you gear your pitch towards what they want. That's what you do. And that's when negotiations become a lot more successful, when even the car salesman try to figure out, what does this dude want? Now he's going to make about $4,000 on the car at the end of the month. He's more likely to do a smaller deal because he's going to get his check immediately. So now you can negotiate with him. You see what I'm saying? So let's move on. Last thing I want to talk about is that AI. I want to talk a little bit more about AI. A lot of people are afraid that AI is going to take a lot of people's jobs, and it's probably going to happen. You're probably going to lose your job eventually to AI. Everybody will. It may take 1 year, it may take 20 years, but eventually it may take 50 years, but eventually everybody on earth will lose their job to AI. Doctors, everybody, except probably artists and athletes. And probably service providers. Those three people will probably always keep their job. Anybody else is going to lose their job to AI. So you got to start preparing for that now. But one of the first people that will lose their job, and a lot of people in this industry will argue with me, but remember, I was a software security expert. I wrote the CompTIA Security Plus exam for software. I was one of the writers on that. And this was back in 2013. I forgot all of that now, but I went to grad school to study software security. The first, within software development and software in general and tech in general, the first job that's going to go is security. Web security, all of these, any type of security will be taken over by AI first. And the company that's going to do that is a company called CrowdStrike, right? And that's the company I think is in a good position to implement these AI solutions and replace those workers. Now, I know people are going to lose their jobs. Whenever you say replace workers, people get angry. But you can't be angry at the way things are forming. You can do two things. You got to adjust, or you can take advantage of it, one or the other. It's going to happen regardless. It's nothing you can do about that. It's going to happen. You have to be able to, if a river is coming, like if I'm going up a river, right? And the river is coming this way, I can swim as hard as I want against the current. I ain't going to go nowhere. Until I turn around and swim with the current is when I finally will stop expending so much energy and will realize that we was going to go that way anyway. So why am I going to sit here and fight it? That's the same thing we do in society, is that when things are going to go a certain way, you can't fight it. It's going to happen anyway. So you have to either go with it like that current, or you got to find a way to benefit from it. So CrowdStrike, I think, over the next year or so is going to do extremely well by replacing some of those security workers, hardware security, web security, network security, and even software security. So their revenue is already growing over every quarter, 30, 40% every quarter. The stock is already up 47% this year. And I think that it can go up another 100, 150% over the next 2 years. So like I said, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to ask any questions. Remember, I need you to like the video on YouTube. I need you guys to share the video, or not share no more because it's over. But if you're interested in joining the CNC, I need you guys to DM me the word CNC. I'll send you the link. You can click the link in my bio, or you can DM me the word CNC and I'll respond with a link, or you can just click the link in the bio, like I already said. Yeah, somebody said, are you saving this on YouTube? Yeah, I'm saving it on YouTube. Can you say all the jobs that will be taken by AI? Every single job, all the jobs.